What if Rhaegar Targaryen survived and raised Jon Snow as a prince? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The waters of the Trident run red with blood. The Ruby Ford has become a killing ground where the fate of 7 kingdoms hangs in the balance. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen sits astride his destrier, his silver hair streaming beneath his helm, watching as the rebel host arrays itself across the muddy battlefield. Robert Baratheon's war cry echoes across the water like thunder, his massive warhammer gleaming in the afternoon sun. This is the moment that will decide everything. Rhaegar spurs his horse forward into the shallow water. The prince's blade, wreathed in ripples of Valyrian steel, catches the light as he raises it high. Around him, the loyalist forces surge forward with desperate fury. Dragons and stags clash in the muddy ford, while ravens wheel overhead like harbingers of doom. Robert charges through the press of men like a maddened bull, his antlered helm marking him as clearly as a battle standard. His warhammer crushes skulls and shatters shields with every swing. Men scatter before the Lord of Storm's End, their courage breaking like waves against a cliff. But Rhaegar does not flee. The Dragon Prince meets the Stag Lord in the center of the ford. Water explodes around their mounts as the 2 champions circle each other, their armies forgotten. Robert's warhammer swings in a deadly arc, whistling through the air with enough force to shatter stone. But Rhaegar is ready. The prince leans back in his saddle, feeling the wind of the hammer's passage brush his face. His sword comes up in a perfect counterattack, the point seeking the gap in Robert's gorget. Robert twists away, his own blade scraping against dragon-forged steel with a sound like screaming metal. "You stole her!" Robert roars, his voice thick with rage and pain. "You raped her! You killed her!" Rhaegar says nothing. His violet eyes are cold as winter stars. He knows the truth about Lyanna Stark, about their secret marriage, about the child she carries even now in the Tower of Joy. But Robert will never understand. The rebel lord sees only what his wounded heart allows him to see. The warhammer comes down again, but this time Rhaegar is moving. His destrier sidesteps with the grace of a dancer, and the prince's sword slides between the plates of Robert's armor like a whisper of death. The Valyrian steel finds its mark. Robert Baratheon stiffens in his saddle, his eyes wide with shock. The warhammer slips from his nerveless fingers and splashes into the red water below. He looks down at the sword protruding from his chest, then up at Rhaegar's face. "Lyanna," he whispers, and topples from his horse. The Lord of Storm's End floats face down in the Trident, his life's blood mingling with the current. Around them, the battle falters as word spreads like wildfire. Robert Baratheon is dead. The rebellion's greatest champion has fallen. Lord Randyll Tarly raises the dragon banner high above the carnage. "For the dragon! For Prince Rhaegar!" The loyalist forces surge forward with renewed vigor, their victory cries echoing across the battlefield. The rebel lines waver, then break entirely. Men throw down their weapons and flee toward the eastern bank, their cause dying with their king. Rhaegar watches the rout with grim satisfaction. He pulls his sword free and wipes the blade clean on his cloak. The Ruby Ford will remember this day forever, the day the dragons proved they still had fire. But even as his men cheer around him, the prince's thoughts are elsewhere. Lyanna waits for him in Dawn, heavy with child and protected by only 3 sworn swords. Every day he delays is another day she faces danger alone. The rebellion may be broken, but Robert's allies still hold castles and commands. Ned Stark and Jon Arryn will not simply yield because their chosen king is dead. Ravens take wing from the battlefield, carrying news of Robert's death to every corner of the realm. Some fly north to Winterfell, where Ned Stark will learn that his sister's alleged kidnapper has triumphed. Others wing their way to the Eyrie, where Jon Arryn must decide whether to continue a war his foster son can no longer win. Still more head south to King's Landing, where the Mad King waits for word of his son's fate. Rhaegar dismounts beside Robert's body. The Lord of Storm's End looks smaller in death, his face peaceful beneath the murky water. There is no triumph in the prince's heart, only a hollow ache. This man loved Lyanna Stark, truly loved her, and died believing she had been wronged. If only Robert could have understood the truth. If only things could have been different. "My prince!" Lord Connington appears at his shoulder, his griffin-emblazoned surcoat stained with blood and mud. "What are your orders?" Rhaegar turns away from Robert's corpse. The battle is won, but the war is far from over. "Send word to all the great lords. The rebellion is finished. Those who yield will be pardoned. Those who continue to resist will be destroyed." He pauses, his violet gaze distant. "And prepare a fast horse. I ride for dawn at first light." Jon Connington nods, understanding flickering in his eyes. The prince has other duties now, more important than accepting surrenders and dispensing justice. Somewhere in the Red Mountains, Lyanna Stark waits for her dragon prince to return, and when he does, the child she carries will change everything. The sun sets over the Trident, casting long shadows across the field of the dead. But for the first time in months, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen allows himself to hope. The realm will have peace, his father's madness will be contained, and most importantly, his son will be born into a world where dragons still fly. The Ruby Ford remembers, but it is not Robert Baratheon's defeat it will carry through the ages. It is the day the Dragon Prince chose love over war and changed the course of history forever. The red mountains of dawn rise like broken teeth against the dawn sky. Prince Rhaegar drives his destrier hard along the rocky paths, his small company of knights struggling to match his desperate pace. 3 days have passed since Robert Baratheon fell in the Trident's bloody waters. 3 days since the rebellion began to crumble, but none of that matters now. Only Lyanna matters. The prince's silver hair whips behind him like a battle standard as he navigates the treacherous mountain passes. Sir Arthur Dayne would have sent word if something were wrong. The Sword of the Morning is the finest knight in the 7 kingdoms, and his oaths run deeper than the roots of mountains, but still Rhaegar's heart hammers against his ribs like a caged bird. The child should have been born by now, their child, his and Lyanna's. The Tower of Joy appears through the morning mist like a vision from a song. The round tower stands alone in a small valley, its pale stones catching the first rays of sunlight. But there are no banners flying from its height, no guards visible on the battlements. An eerie silence hangs over the lonely fortress like a shroud. Rhaegar's destrier stumbles on the loose stone, nearly throwing him from the saddle. He steadies the exhausted horse and pushes forward, his violet eyes fixed on the tower's entrance. Behind him, his companions struggle to keep pace. Lord Connington's griffin-crested helm gleams in the sun, while young Sir Richard Lonmouth's mount foams at the mouth from the hard ride. Sir Arthur Dayne emerges from the tower's shadow like a ghost made flesh. The Sword of the Morning's face is grave, his usually immaculate white cloak stained with dust and darker things. Dawn rests in its sheath at his hip, but his hands hang empty at his sides. "My prince," Arthur's voice carries across the courtyard, thick with an emotion Rhaegar has never heard from the legendary knight. Rhaegar vaults from his saddle before his horse comes to a complete stop. His boots ring against the stone as he strides toward Arthur, reading the truth in his sworn sword's eyes before any words are spoken. How long? Rhaegar's voice is barely a whisper. 2 hours past dawn, Arthur replies, his weathered face etched with grief. The birthing was difficult. She fought to the very end, my prince. Like the wolf she was. The words hit Rhaegar like physical blows. 2 hours. He missed her by 2 hours. All his victories, all his careful planning, all his dreams of a future together, and he arrived 2 hours too late. The child? Arthur's expression shifts, and for the first time in memory, the sword of the morning almost smiles. A son, my prince, strong and healthy, with lungs like a dragon's roar. She named him Jon. Jon, a northern name, simple and strong like the woman who chose it. Rhaegar's chest tightens with a mixture of grief and overwhelming joy. His son lives. Lyanna's final gift to him breathes and cries within the tower's walls. Sir Gerald Hightower appears in the doorway, the elderly Lord Commander's usually stern expression softened by sorrow. The White Bull inclines his grizzled head as Rhaegar approaches. She waits for you, my prince, Gerald says quietly. We thought it best to leave her as she was until you arrived. Rhaegar nods, not trusting his voice. He pushes past the 2 knights and climbs the winding stairs, each step feeling like he's ascending to his own execution. The tower smells of blood and birth, of life and death intermingled. Somewhere above, a baby's cry echoes off the stone walls. The chamber at the tower's peak is bathed in golden morning light streaming through tall windows. Lyanna Stark lies upon a simple wooden bed, her dark hair spread across white pillows like spilled wine. She looks peaceful in death, younger somehow, as if the years of war and secret hiding have been smoothed away by gentle hands. But it is the bundle in her arms that steals Rhaegar's breath. The baby is small, red-faced, and absolutely perfect. Dark hair crowns his tiny head, so unlike Rhaegar's silver locks, but his eyes, when they flutter open, are the deep purple of his Targaryen heritage. Jon, their son. The prince that was promised, born of ice and fire. Rhaegar sinks to his knees beside the bed, his armor clanking against the stone floor. With trembling hands, he reaches out to touch Lyanna's cold cheek. "Forgive me," he whispers, his voice breaking. "I tried to come sooner. I wanted to be here for you." The baby stirs in her arms, making small mewing sounds. Rhaegar carefully lifts his son from Lyanna's embrace, cradling the infant against his chest. The child is warm and solid and real, a miracle born from the ashes of war. Jon Targaryen. Rhaegar speaks the name aloud, testing how it sounds. Prince Jon Targaryen. Arthur Dayne's voice drifts up from the doorway. She made us promise, my prince, to keep him safe, to protect him from Robert's followers, who might seek revenge. The knight pauses. She knew you would legitimize him. Of course she did. Lyanna understood him better than anyone else in the world. She knew he would never allow their son to bear the stain of bastardy, even if it meant political complications. This child is no bastard. He is true-born, conceived in love and born in wedlock, no matter what the rest of the world might believe. Rhaegar stands, still holding his son, and looks down at Lyanna's peaceful face one last time. She gave everything for this moment. Her life, her family, her home in the north, all sacrificed so their child could be born. The least he can do is ensure that sacrifice means something. "Sir Gerald," he calls, his voice stronger now. "Send word to the citadel. I want the finest maesters to examine every detail of the prince's birth. There must be no doubt of his legitimacy." "And the Lady Lyanna?" Arthur asks softly. Rhaegar's jaw tightens with resolve. We build her a tomb here. This place will be a shrine to her memory. She died bringing a prince into the world. She deserves to be remembered as a princess. He turns toward the windows, looking out over the Dornish mountains toward the distant capital. King's Landing awaits, along with his mad father and all the political chaos that will follow Robert's death. But first, he has a son to protect and a kingdom to secure. "Arthur, Gerald," he says, without turning around. "Gather wet nurses from the nearby villages. Discreet ones, with no love for Robert Baratheon or his cause. The prince travels with us, but his identity remains secret until we reach King's Landing." "And then, my prince?" Gerald asks. Rhaegar shifts Jon to one arm and places his other hand on the window's cold stone. Below, his small company of knights tends their horses and waits for orders. Beyond them, the Seven Kingdoms stretch away in all directions, a realm that will soon belong to the child in his arms. "Then we present my son to the Iron Throne," he says, his voice carrying the weight of destiny. "Prince Jon Targaryen, true-born heir of House Targaryen, born of the union between ice and fire. The realm will bow to him, or it will burn." The baby makes a soft sound, almost like a purr, and Rhaegar looks down to find violet eyes staring up at him with infant curiosity. In that moment, staring into his son's face, the Dragon Prince sees the future laid out before them, like pieces on a civasse board. This child will be raised as a prince, not a bastard. He will learn to fight and rule and lead. He will understand his dual heritage, both wolf and dragon, ice and fire. And when the time comes, he will take his rightful place as king of the Seven Kingdoms. But first, Rhaegar must clear the path for him. The sun climbs higher over the red mountains, casting long shadows across the Tower of Joy. Inside its walls, a prince mourns his lost love while cradling their newborn son. Outside, a realm waits unknowingly for the child who will reshape its destiny. The Age of Dragons has begun anew, and its herald is a baby's cry, echoing through the Dornish peaks. The Red Keep looms against the afternoon sky, like a great blood-red beast, its towers reaching toward heaven like grasping claws. Prince Rhaegar rides through the gates of King's Landing with his small retinue, the infant Jon hidden among wet nurses and servants in a covered wagon. The capital celebrates their prince's victory at the Trident, but Rhaegar feels no joy. Only a cold dread that settles in his bones like winter frost. King Aerys II waits in the throne room, perched atop the Iron Throne like a vulture surveying carrion. The Mad King's silver hair hangs in greasy tangles around his gaunt face, and his fingernails have grown long and sharp as talons. He has not bathed in months, and the smell of him carries across the great hall like a physical presence. "My son!" Aerys calls out, his voice echoing off the high stone walls. "My dragon prince returns victorious. Come, tell your king how Robert Baratheon died screaming." Rhaegar approaches the throne with measured steps, his violet eyes fixed on his father's face. The court watches in silence, sensing the tension that crackles between father and son, like lightning before a storm. Lord Tywin Lannister stands among the observers, his green eyes calculating. Sir Jaime Lannister holds his post beside the throne, young and golden and beautiful in his white cloak. "Robert Baratheon fell at the Trident, Your Grace," Rhaegar says, his voice carefully neutral. "The rebellion is broken. The usurper is dead." "Yes, yes." Aerys claps his hands together like a delighted child, the sound sharp as breaking bones. "And now you've come home to your father. But what is this I hear? Whispers in the walls, little birds singing strange songs. His eyes narrow to purple slits. They say you bring a bastard home from dawn, a mewling infant you claim as your own. The throne room falls silent as a tomb. Even the torches seem to burn quieter, as if the very flames fear the king's madness. Rhaegar's hand moves instinctively toward his sword hilt, then stops. "I bring my son, your grace, Prince Jon Targaryen, legitimized by royal decree." Aerys leans forward on the iron throne, the twisted metal groaning under his weight. "Your son? Your son?" His laughter is like the screech of metal on stone. "You dare legitimize a bastard without your king's consent? You dare name a bastard prince?" "He is no bastard," Rhaegar says, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "Jon is my true-born son, conceived in lawful marriage." "Marriage?" Aerys's voice rises to a shriek. "What marriage? I gave you no leave to marry. I am your king. I am your father. All marriages require my consent." The Mad King rises from the Iron Throne, his movements jerky and uncontrolled. "You think I don't know? You think your father is stupid? The wolves told me everything before they died. Brandon Stark came here screaming about his stolen sister. You took the wolf girl. You bedded her. You got a bastard on her. And now you parade that bastard before me like he's a prince." Lord Varys materializes from the shadows, like a spider, sensing vibrations in his web. The eunuch's soft voice carries clearly through the hall. "Your Grace, perhaps we might discuss this matter in private. The court need not—" "Silence!" Aerys rounds on the master of whisperers, spittle flying from his lips. "I'll hear no more whispers, no more secrets, no more lies." He turns back to Rhaegar, his eyes blazing with madness. "You will put aside this bastard. You will marry a proper wife, a Lannister girl, or perhaps one of the Tyrells. We need alliances, not bastards." Rhaegar takes a step forward, his hand now resting openly on his sword hilt. "I will not put aside my son. Jon Targaryen is my heir, and he will remain so." The words hang in the air like a challenge thrown down before the throne. Aerys stares at his son with wild eyes, his mind working furiously behind his cracked facade. When he speaks again, his voice is soft and deadly. "Your heir? Your heir?" He laughs, a sound like breaking glass. "You think too much of yourself, my son. You think the realm loves you more than their king. You think your pretty face and your songs make you worthy of the Iron Throne." Aerys begins to pace before the throne, his movements erratic and unpredictable. "But I see the truth. I see how you look at this seat. I hear the whispers that follow you. The lords bow to you, not to me. They celebrate your victories, not mine. They love you, not me." "Father, I am your king!" Aerys screams, his voice cracking with strain. "Not your father, your king, and I will not have you plotting against me with your bastard son. I will not have you planning to usurp me." The Mad King's eyes focus on something only he can see, some phantom threat that exists only in his fevered imagination. "Viserys," he says suddenly, his voice taking on a sing-song quality. "My second son, my good son, my loyal son. Perhaps it's time the realm had a new heir." A collective intake of breath echoes through the throne room. Lords and courtiers exchange shocked glances. To disinherit the crown prince is unthinkable, unprecedented. But then, Aerys Targaryen has done many unthinkable things. "You wouldn't dare," Rhaegar says, his voice low and dangerous. "I am the king!" Aerys shrieks, pointing one long fingernail at his son. "I can do anything. I can burn cities. I can make princes. I can unmake them just as easily." His voice drops to a whisper, but everyone in the hall strains to hear. Bring me the bastard. Bring me this pretender you call a prince. No. The single word falls into the silence like a stone into still water. Rhaegar stands perfectly still, his violet eyes locked on his father's face. You will not touch my son. Aerys tilts his head like a curious bird. No. Did you just say no to your king? He begins to giggle, a sound more terrifying than his screams. Fetch the wildfire, Wisdom Rossart. Let's see how well dragon blood burns. Sir Jaime Lannister shifts uncomfortably at his post, his young face pale beneath his golden hair. The other Kingsguard members stand rigid as statues, torn between their oaths to protect the king and their horror at his words. I will burn the bastard, Aerys declares, spreading his arms wide as if embracing the flames that exist only in his mind. I will burn him and his wet nurses and anyone else who dares bring pretenders before the Iron Throne. The flames will purify everything. Rhaegar's sword clears its sheath in one fluid motion, the Valyrian steel singing as it cuts through the air. The blade comes to rest at his father's throat, the point dimpling the Mad King's pale skin. Touch my son, Rhaegar says, his voice deadly calm, and I will end you. The throne room erupts in chaos. Lords shout in alarm, ladies scream, and the Kingsguard moves uncertainly toward their prince. But Jaime Lannister makes no move to defend his king. The young knight stares at the tableau before him, with something like relief in his green eyes. Aerys looks down at the sword pressed against his throat, then up at his son's face. For a moment, his expression clears, and he looks almost lucid, almost sane. So, he whispers, it comes to this. The son against the father, the prince against the king. His lips twist into a grotesque smile. I always knew you would try to kill me. I always knew. I don't want to kill you, Rhaegar says, and there is genuine pain in his voice. I want to protect my son. I want to protect the realm. Step down, father. Let me rule. Let me fix what you've broken. Aerys closes his eyes, and when he opens them again, all trace of sanity is gone. Never! He screams, spittle flying into Rhaegar's face. I am the king. I am the dragon. I will burn you all. The Mad King lunges forward, impaling his throat on his son's blade. Blood bubbles from his lips as he stares up at Rhaegar with wild, dying eyes. Burn them all, he whispers, his final words echoing through the throne room like a curse. Burn them all. King Aerys II Targaryen slides to the floor of the throne room, his blood pooling on the stones before the Iron Throne. The Mad King is dead, killed by his own son's sword, brought down by his own madness. Rhaegar stares down at his father's corpse, his sword still in his hand. The blade drips crimson onto the floor, each drop echoing in the terrible silence. Long live the king, someone whispers in the crowd. The words are taken up by others, spreading through the throne room like wildfire. Long live King Rhaegar! Long live the Dragon King! Rhaegar looks up from his father's body to see the court kneeling before him. Lords and ladies, knights and servants, all bowing to their new king. At their head, Sir Jaime Lannister has removed his helm and bent his knee, his golden hair catching the torchlight. But Rhaegar feels no triumph, only a hollow ache in his chest where his heart should be. He has won the Iron Throne, but the cost was his father's life. He has secured his son's future, but he has become a kinslayer in the process. In a room far below the throne room, a baby cries, as if sensing the weight of destiny settling upon his tiny shoulders. Prince Jon Targaryen, son of ice and fire, heir to the Iron Throne. The realm will kneel to him someday. But first, it must kneel to his father, the kinslayer king. The Iron Throne sits empty in the great hall, its twisted metal edges gleaming in the torchlight like bared teeth. King Aerys II. Targaryen's blood has been scrubbed from the stones, but the memory of his death lingers in every shadow. 3 days have passed since Rhaegar killed his father, and the realm holds its breath. The new king stands in his solar, staring out at the sprawling city below. King's Landing bustles with nervous energy as word spreads through every street and alley. The Mad King is dead. The Dragon Prince has taken the throne. Some whisper that the realm is saved. Others mutter darkly about kinslayers and cursed crowns. Rhaegar turns from the window as Lord Tywin Lannister enters the chamber. The old lion moves with careful dignity, his green eyes assessing everything with the cold calculation of a man who has survived 3 kings and intends to survive a 4th. "Your Grace," Tywin says, offering a precise bow, "the small council awaits your pleasure." "Let them wait a moment longer," Rhaegar replies, his voice carrying the weight of sleepless nights. "Tell me, Lord Tywin, what do they say in the streets?" Tywin's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. "They say many things, Your Grace. Some call you the savior of the realm. Others—" he pauses. "Others speak of kinslayers and the curses that follow them. The truth of it sits heavy in the air between them. Rhaegar has won the throne, but he has paid the price in blood and honor. A king who kills his own father, even a mad one, carries that stain forever." "And what do you say, Lord Tywin?" Rhaegar asks. "I say that Aerys Targaryen was mad," Tywin replies without hesitation. "I say that he threatened to burn King's Landing with wildfire. I say that you saved the realm from a madman's final act of spite." He pauses. "I also say that doesn't matter to those who will use your father's death against you." A soft knock interrupts them. Sir Arthur Dayne enters, his white cloak pristine, despite the chaos of recent days. The Sword of the Morning carries a bundle wrapped in cloth of gold, and his usually stern expression shows a hint of warmth. "Your Grace," Arthur says, "the prince grows restless. His wet nurse believes he wishes to see his father." Rhaegar's face transforms as Arthur unwraps the bundle, revealing baby Jon. The infant has grown in just a few days, his violet eyes alert and curious as they fix on his father's face. Here is the reason for everything. The reason Rhaegar killed his own father. The reason he now wears a crown stained with kindred blood. "Bring him to me," Rhaegar says, extending his arms. Arthur places Jon in his father's embrace, and immediately the baby calms. Tiny fingers grasp at Rhaegar's doublet, and the infant makes soft, cooing sounds that echo strangely in the stone chamber. "He has your eyes, Your Grace," Tywin observes, and there is something almost like approval in his voice. "The realm will see him as a true dragon." "The realm will see him as the son of a kinslayer," Rhaegar says bitterly. "They will whisper that his throne was won with patricide." "Then we must give them something else to whisper about," Arthur suggests. "Present him publicly. Let them see that he is strong and healthy. Let them see that the Targaryen line continues." Rhaegar looks down at his son, seeing not just an infant, but the future of their house. Jon will grow up knowing that his father killed his grandfather to protect him. The boy will carry that burden his entire life, just as Rhaegar now carries the weight of kinslaying. "Send word to all the great lords," Rhaegar decides, his voice growing stronger. "Tell them that King Rhaegar, first of his name, commands their presence for his coronation and the formal presentation of his heir. Those who come will be welcomed with honor. Those who refuse—" He lets the threat hang unspoken. Tywin nods approvingly. A wise choice, Your Grace. Show strength from the beginning. But what of the remaining rebels? Ned Stark still holds the north. Jon Arryn maintains his power in the Vale. They lost their war when Robert died, Rhaegar says, shifting Jon to one arm. But they did not choose this rebellion for conquest. They fought because they believed I had wronged the Stark girl. Now I must convince them that their cause was built on lies. Arthur frowns. Will you tell them the truth about Lady Lyanna? About your marriage? The question hangs in the air like incense, heavy and complex. The truth would vindicate Rhaegar's actions, prove that he never kidnapped or raped Lyanna Stark. But it would also reveal that Jon is not a bastard, legitimized by royal decree, but a true-born prince with an unshakable claim to the throne. That knowledge could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Not yet, Rhaegar says finally. Let them believe Jon is my acknowledged bastard, legitimized and raised high by royal favor. The full truth can wait until he is older, and the realm more stable. The solar door opens again, and Varys glides in like a ship on calm water. The Master of Whisperers wears his usual expression of benign concern, his hands folded in his sleeves. Your Grace, the eunuch says in his soft voice, word has come from the north. Lord Stark has received news of your ascension. He sends his congratulations on your victory at the Trident and his condolences for your father's tragic death. Condolences? Rhaegar's eyebrows rise. Indeed, Your Grace. It seems Lord Stark chooses to view King Aerys' death as a tragedy rather than a necessity. He is perhaps more diplomatic than his late brother Brandon. The subtle reminder of Brandon Stark's death hangs in the air. Aerys burned Brandon and his father, Rickard, alive in this very castle. If anyone should understand why the Mad King had to die, it should be Ned Stark. What else does Lord Stark say? Rhaegar asks. He requests safe passage to King's Landing, Varys replies. He wishes to bend the knee in person and swear fealty to the new king. He also asks about his sister's burial. The words hit Rhaegar like a physical blow. Lyanna's tomb in the Tower of Joy is far from her family's crypts in Winterfell. She lies alone in dawn, surrounded by roses and memories instead of her ancestors' bones. Tell Lord Stark that his sister was given all honors befitting a princess, Rhaegar says carefully. Tell him that her resting place is sacred to me, and that he is welcome to visit it whenever he wishes. Jon stirs in his father's arms, making small sounds that might be hunger or simply infant conversation. The baby's violet eyes seem to focus on Rhaegar's face with startling intensity, as if he can sense the weight of the discussions happening around him. The coronation should be held within the fortnight, Tywin suggests. Long enough for the major lords to travel here, but soon enough to prevent any pretenders from gathering strength. What pretenders? Arthur asks sharply. Prince Viserys remains at large, Varys notes. The young prince fled the capital on the night of his father's death. My little birds tell me he has taken ship for the free cities. He may style himself the rightful king in exile. Viserys is 8 years old, Rhaegar says dismissively. He poses no threat. Today perhaps not, Tywin replies, but children grow up, Your Grace, and exiled princes have a way of attracting desperate men with forgotten grudges. The conversation is interrupted by a commotion outside. Raised voices echo through the corridors of the Red Keep, followed by the sound of approaching footsteps. Ser Jaime Lannister appears in the doorway, his young face flushed with excitement. Your Grace, Jaime says, slightly out of breath. Lord Arryn has arrived. He comes under a peace banner and asks for immediate audience. The Solar falls silent. Jon Arryn, the man who raised Robert Baratheon like a son, stands in the Red Keep. The same man who called his banners to overthrow the Targaryen dynasty now seeks audience with the Dragon King. "Bring him here," Rhaegar commands, "but keep guards nearby. Peace banners have been known to lie." Within minutes, Jon Arryn enters the Solar. The Lord of the Eyrie is an older man, his hair more grey than brown, his face lined with the weight of years and sorrow. He wears simple travelling clothes rather than armour, and he comes alone save for Jaime at his shoulder. "Your Grace," Jon Arryn says, and to everyone's surprise, he drops to one knee. "I come to bend the knee and seek your forgiveness." Rhaegar shifts Jon to his left arm, his right hand resting casually on his sword hilt. "Rise, Lord Arryn. Speak your mind." Jon Arryn stands slowly, his old bones creaking. "I supported Robert Baratheon because I believed he fought for justice. I believed you had dishonoured the Stark girl and murdered her for your pleasures." He pauses, his eyes finding the baby in Rhaegar's arms. "But Robert is dead, and the realm needs peace more than it needs revenge for old wounds." "And what of justice?" Rhaegar asks. "You raised Robert like a son. Does his death not cry out for vengeance?" "Robert chose his path when he took up arms against his lawful king," Jon Arryn replies steadily. "He died a warrior's death in honourable combat. I mourn him, but I will not compound the realm's suffering with further bloodshed." The old lord's eyes linger on baby Jon, and something like wonder crosses his weathered features. "Is this your son, your grace?" "This is Prince Jon Targaryen, my heir and the future of House Targaryen," Rhaegar confirms. Jon Arryn nods slowly. He has the look of kings about him. The realm will be fortunate to have such a prince. He looks back at Rhaegar. "I offer my loyalty, your grace, and that of the Vale. Let the past be buried with the past." Rhaegar studies the old lord's face, searching for deception or hidden malice. But Jon Arryn's eyes hold only weary resignation and genuine hope for peace. "I accept your fealty, Lord Arryn," Rhaegar says formally. "Rise as my true and loyal vassal, warden of the East and defender of the Vale." The kneeling, the formal words, the acceptance. It is all theatre, but theatre that matters. Jon Arryn's submission sends a message to every lord in the Seven Kingdoms. The rebellion is truly over. The dragon sits the Iron Throne, and the realm has chosen peace over war. As Jon Arryn rises, baby Jon makes a small sound that might be approval. The infant prince, held in his father's arms while lords kneel and empires shift, seems to understand that this moment marks the beginning of something new. The age of the Kinslayer king has begun, and his son will inherit whatever kingdom his blood-stained crown can build. 5 years have passed since the Mad King's blood stained the throne room stones, and King's Landing has never been more prosperous. The Red Keep bustles with activity as King Rhaegar's reign brings stability to a realm that had known only madness and war. In the castle's training yards, the sound of wooden swords clacking together echoes off ancient stones. Prince Jon Targaryen, 5 years old and already showing the promise of both wolf and dragon, parries his instructor's strike with surprising skill. His dark hair is damp with sweat, but his violet eyes remain focused and determined. Sir Arthur Dayne watches from the sidelines, his weathered face showing approval, as the boy executes a perfect counterattack. "Good, my prince," the master-at-arms calls out. "But remember what your father taught you about footwork." Jon shifts his stance, his small boots finding better purchase on the sandy ground. The wooden sword feels heavy in his young hands, but he wields it with natural grace. Around the training yard, other noble children watch with a mixture of awe and envy. Prince Jon is the youngest among them, yet already one of the most skilled. King Rhaegar emerges from the shadows of the colonnade, his silver hair catching the morning sunlight. He wears simple court dress rather than royal regalia, preferring to observe his son's training without the pomp of kingship. The sight of Jon wielding a sword fills him with pride, and something deeper, a fierce protectiveness that has only grown stronger with each passing year. "That's enough for today," Rhaegar calls out, stepping into the yard. "Come, Jon, we have other lessons to attend to." Jon lowers his practice sword and wipes sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The gesture is so reminiscent of Lyanna that Rhaegar's chest tightens with remembered pain. 5 years, and he still sees her in every expression, every movement their son makes. "Did you see, father?" Jon asks, his young voice bright with excitement. "I almost got Sir Roderick 3 times. "I saw," Rhaegar replies, kneeling to Jon's eye level. "Your mother would be proud of how well you fight. She was a warrior too, in her own way." Jon's expression grows serious, as it always does when Rhaegar mentions Lyanna. The boy knows little of his mother beyond what his father has told him, that she was beautiful and brave, that she died bringing him into the world, and that she loved them both more than life itself. "Tell me about her again," Jon says, as he has countless times before. "Tonight," Rhaegar promises, taking his son's small hand in his own. "After your other lessons. But first, Lord Manderley waits in my solar. He brings news from the north." They walk together through the corridors of the Red Keep, father and son, king and prince. Servants bow as they pass, but Jon barely notices. His attention is fixed on his father's face, reading the subtle changes in expression that 5 years of close observation have taught him to interpret. "Is it bad news?" Jon asks. Rhaegar considers the question carefully. At 5 years old, Jon already shows a keen intelligence that sometimes startles even his father. The boy thinks like a prince, always watching, always analyzing, always seeking to understand the forces that shape their world. "Not bad," Rhaegar says finally, "but complicated. Lord Manderley brings word from your Uncle Ned." Jon's eyes widen slightly. He has heard stories of Ned Stark, the quiet lord who rules the north with honor and justice. Jon knows that Ned was his mother's brother, but the relationship between the North and the Iron Throne remains delicate, built on mutual respect rather than warm affection. They enter the solar to find Lord Wyman Manderley waiting, his considerable bulk filling one of the chairs before the hearth. The Lord of White Harbour rises with surprising grace for such a large man, offering a deep bow to his king and prince. "Your Grace, my prince," Manderley says, his voice warm with genuine affection. The boy grows more like his mother every time I see him. Jon looks up at his father questioningly. Rhaegar's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, but he nods for Manderley to continue. "Lord Stark sends his regards," Manderley says carefully. "He reports that the harvest has been good, and the north remains peaceful. He also—" The Lord pauses, glancing at Jon. He asks again about visiting his sister's resting place. The request hangs in the air like morning mist. For 5 years, Ned Stark has made the same inquiry. Always politely, always respectfully, but with a persistence that speaks to deep grief. The Tower of Joy remains Lyanna's tomb, guarded by Rhaegar's men and kept as a shrine to her memory. Tell Lord Stark that the Tower of Joy welcomes him whenever he wishes to make the journey, Rhaegar says. But also tell him that the road through the Reach may not be safe for a lord traveling with a small escort. The words are diplomatic, but their meaning is clear. The realm has been at peace for 5 years, but peace is a fragile thing. There are still men who remember Robert's rebellion, still lords who whisper about the Kinslayer king and his bastard son. A northern lord traveling through potentially hostile territory would make an inviting target. "There is other news," Manderley continues, his expression growing more serious. "Ships from across the narrow sea bring tales of the exiled prince. Viserys Targaryen has found patrons among the magisters of Pentos. They say he calls himself the rightful king and speaks of returning to reclaim his birthright." Jon looks between the adults, his young mind processing this information. He knows that Viserys is his father's brother, the prince who fled when grandfather Aerys died. But he has never understood why Viserys considers himself a threat to their family. "Uncle Viserys is still angry?" Jon asks. Rhaegar places a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Some people find it difficult to accept when the world changes around them. Your uncle believes he should be king instead of me." "But you're the rightful king," Jon says, with the absolute certainty of childhood. "You won the throne when you beat Robert Baratheon." "Yes," Rhaegar agrees quietly. "But some will always question the right of a man who killed his own father, even to save the realm." The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Maester Pycelle, his ancient frame moving slowly but purposefully. The Grand Maester carries a leather satchel filled with scrolls and books, the tools of Jon's formal education. "Your Grace, my prince," Pycelle wheezes. "It is time for Prince Jon's lessons in history and letters." Jon groans softly, but accepts the transition from swordplay to scholarship with good grace. Rhaegar watches as his son settles at the study table, his young face growing serious as he opens the first book. The sight fills the king with complex emotions. Pride at Jon's intelligence, satisfaction at his son's dedication, but also a deep sadness that the boy must learn so young about the burdens of rule. "What are we studying today, Maester Pycelle?" Jon asks politely. "The history of House Targaryen, my prince," Pycelle replies, settling his old bones into a chair. "Today we learn about Aegon the Conqueror and how he united the Seven Kingdoms." As the lesson begins, Rhaegar steps back to observe. Jon listens intently as Pycelle describes the conquest, his violet eyes bright with interest when the Maester speaks of dragons and battles. But when the discussion turns to the more complex aspects of ruling, the need for alliances, the balance between justice and mercy, Jon's questions become surprisingly sophisticated. "Why didn't Aegon just burn all his enemies?" Jon asks. "Wouldn't that have been easier?" "Because a king who rules only through fear will eventually face rebellion," Pycelle explains patiently. Aegon understood that true power comes from the willing obedience of one's subjects, not their terrified submission. Jon nods thoughtfully, then looks at his father. "Is that why some lords still don't like us? Because they're afraid instead of loyal?" The question cuts to the heart of Rhaegar's greatest challenge. 5 years of peace and prosperity have not entirely erased the stain of kinslaying. Some lords remain nervous in the Dragon King's presence, uncertain whether his apparent wisdom and justice mask a deeper instability. "Some," Rhaegar admits, "but others have learned to trust that I rule for the good of the realm, not for my own glory." The lesson continues for another hour, covering the reigns of various Targaryen kings and the lessons their successes and failures offer. Jon absorbs it all with the hungry intelligence of a born student, asking questions that often surprise both his father and his teacher. When the formal lesson ends, father and son walk together to the castle's godswood. The heart tree stands ancient and watchful in the center of the grove, its red leaves rustling in the afternoon breeze. This has become their private ritual, an hour each day when king and prince can speak freely, away from the watching eyes of the court. "Tell me about Mother now," Jon says, settling against the heart tree's trunk. Rhaegar sits beside his son, his back against the white bark. These moments are sacred to him, when he can share Lyanna's memory with the child who will never know her, except through his words. "Your mother was the most beautiful woman in the 7 kingdoms," he begins, as he always does. But her beauty was nothing compared to her spirit. She was fierce and brave, with a heart as big as the North itself. "Was she really a good fighter?" Jon asks. "Better than most knights," Rhaegar says with a smile. "She could ride better than anyone I ever knew, and she had a way with horses that seemed almost magical. She laughed like running water and loved like wildfire." Jon listens with rapt attention, storing every detail about the mother he never knew. These stories are his most precious treasures, more valuable to him than any crown or title. "Do I look like her?" Jon asks. Rhaegar studies his son's face. The dark hair so unlike his own silver locks, the strong jaw that will one day mirror Ned Stark's, the eyes that are pure Targaryen violet. "You have her hair and her stubborn chin," he says, "but you have my eyes, and something of both our spirits. You're going to be a great man someday, Jon. A great king." "Will I be better than grandfather?" Jon asks quietly. The question hangs heavy between them. Jon knows the basic truth, that his grandfather was called the Mad King, that he did terrible things, that his father had to stop him. But the full horror of Aerys's reign remains mercifully hidden from the boy's understanding. "You will be better than all of us," Rhaegar says, with absolute conviction. "You have the best of both your bloodlines, the fire of the dragon and the ice of the wolf. That combination will make you stronger than any king who came before." As the sun sets over King's Landing, father and son sit together beneath the heart tree, planning for a future neither of them can fully imagine. Jon will grow up loved and protected, educated in both warfare and wisdom, prepared for the crown that will one day rest on his head. But he will also grow up knowing that his throne was won with kindred blood, that his father bears the stain of kinslaying, and that somewhere across the narrow sea, an uncle plots their destruction. The boy who will become king carries both light and shadow in his heritage, ice and fire in his blood, love and loss in his heart. Prince Jon Targaryen, 5 years old and already showing the promise of greatness, sits beneath the godswood and dreams of dragons. The King's Road stretches endlessly northward, a ribbon of packed earth cutting through the heart of the 7 kingdoms. King Rhaegar rides at the head of a modest royal procession, his silver hair gleaming beneath a simple circlet of Valyrian steel. Beside him, 5-year-old Prince Jon bounces excitedly in his saddle, his violet eyes wide with wonder at the changing landscape. This is Jon's first journey beyond the walls of King's Landing, and everything fascinates him. The rolling hills give way to dense forests, and the air grows colder with each mile northward. Rhaegar watches his son's reactions with a mixture of pride and apprehension. In a few days, Jon will stand in the halls where his mother grew up, though the boy knows nothing of that connection. "Are we really going to see Uncle Ned?" Jon asks for the 10th time since they left the capital. "Lord Stark," Rhaegar corrects gently. "And yes, we are going to Winterfell to strengthen the bonds between North and South." Jon nods seriously, though his excitement is barely contained. He has heard so many stories about the North, about honor and wolves, about ancient kings and forgotten magic. Now he will see it all for himself. The royal party is smaller than usual for a king's progress. Rhaegar brings only his most trusted knights. Sir Arthur Dane, Sir Barristan Selmy, and a dozen others. This journey is about reconciliation, not displays of power. Too large an escort would send the wrong message to a people who value simplicity over pageantry. 3 days later, the towers of Winterfell rise before them like ancient sentinels. The castle looks exactly as Lyanna once described it, strong and enduring, built to withstand both winter storms and the test of time. Smoke rises from its chimneys, and banners bearing the Stark direwolf snap in the cold wind. Rhaegar's chest tightens as they approach the gates. Somewhere within those walls, Lyanna laughed and dreamed and planned a future she would never see. Her ghost walks these battlements, and Rhaegar feels her presence like a physical weight. The gates of Winterfell swing open, and Lord Eddard Stark emerges to greet his king. Ned has aged in the 5 years since Robert's death, his dark hair now touched with premature grey. His face remains as stern and honest as ever, but there are lines around his eyes that speak of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. "Your Grace," Ned says, offering a precise bow. "Winterfell welcomes you." "Lord Stark," Rhaegar replies, dismounting from his destrier. "Thank you for hosting us. The North's hospitality is legendary." Jon slides down from his pony with 5-year-old enthusiasm, looking around the courtyard with undisguised fascination. His gaze fixes on a boy his own age, standing near the keep's entrance, auburn-haired and serious, with the unmistakable features of House Stark. "Father," Jon whispers, tugging at Rhaegar's cloak, "who is that boy?" Rhaegar follows his son's gaze and feels his breath catch. Robb Stark, Ned's firstborn son, stands watching the royal visitors with curious grey eyes. The family resemblance between the two boys is subtle but unmistakable. The same age, the same earnest expression, the same unconscious nobility in their bearing. "That is Robb Stark, Lord Ned's son," Rhaegar says quietly. "He is your age, and I suspect he will be eager to make your acquaintance." Lady Catelyn Stark appears beside her husband, her tully blue eyes watchful and assessing. She curtsies gracefully to the king, but Rhaegar notices how her gaze lingers on Jon with an expression he cannot quite read. Not hostility, exactly, but something close to unease. "Your Grace honours us with your presence," Catelyn says in her cultured voice. "We have prepared the royal chambers for your comfort." The formal greetings continue, but Jon's attention has already wandered. He drifts toward Robb Stark with the fearless curiosity of childhood, and within moments the two boys are deep in conversation about swords and horses and all the things that fascinate 5-year-olds. "Jon seems taken with your son," Rhaegar observes to Ned. "Robb has been eager to meet the prince," Ned replies, but his voice carries an odd tension. He has heard many stories about the king's son. That evening, the great hall of Winterfell fills with warmth and laughter as the household celebrates their royal guests. Jon sits at the high table beside his father, but his eyes constantly drift to where Robb Stark sits with the younger members of the household. The two boys have become fast friends, bonding over shared interests and similar temperaments. Old Nan, the ancient storyteller of Winterfell, regales the gathered children with tales of the age of heroes. Her weathered voice carries clearly through the hall as she speaks of the long night and the last of the dragons. "There were dragons once," she tells her rapt audience. "Great beasts that could melt stone and boil the sea. They say the last dragon died more than a century past, but some believe they might return when the world grows dark again." Jon leans forward, captivated by every word. "Did they really breathe fire, old Nan?" The ancient woman's eyes twinkle as she looks at the prince. "Fire and shadow and death, little lord. They were beautiful and terrible, and they ruled the skies when the world was young." Her gaze grows distant. "Your house remembers them best, I'd wager. Dragon blood runs true, they say." The words seem to resonate with Jon in a way that surprises even him. He touches his chest unconsciously, as if feeling some hidden warmth there, some connection to the great beasts of legend. Later that night, after the children have been put to bed and the hall has grown quiet, Rhaegar and Ned walk alone through Winterfell's godswood. The heart tree looms before them, its carved face seeming to watch their every movement. This place holds power, ancient and enduring, and both men feel its weight. "She loved this place," Rhaegar says quietly, placing his hand on the white bark of the weirwood. "She told me stories about sitting here for hours, listening to the wind in the leaves." Ned's face tightens with old pain. Lyanna was always drawn to the godswood. She said it helped her think. He pauses, his voice growing heavy. "Tell me truly, Your Grace. Did she suffer?" The question hangs in the cold air between them. Rhaegar closes his eyes, remembering those final moments in the Tower of Joy. Lyanna's weakening voice, her desperate grip on their newborn son, her final words about love and protection. "She died bringing new life into the world," Rhaegar says finally. "She was brave until the very end. Her last thoughts were of love, not pain." "And the child?" Ned asks. "Your son? Is he truly—" "He is truly mine," Rhaegar confirms, understanding the unspoken question. "Born of love, not force. Born of a union that should have been celebrated instead of hidden." Ned stares at the heart tree's face for a long moment, processing this confirmation of what he has long suspected. "She chose you willingly?" "She chose me as I chose her," Rhaegar says. "We were married in the sight of the old gods and the new, with witnesses who could testify to the truth if need be. But that truth would have meant Robert's death warrant for both her and our son." The revelation settles between them like snow falling on still water. Ned's shoulders seem to carry a lighter burden now, knowing that his sister's honor was never truly compromised, that her death came from love rather than violence. "Why tell me now?" Ned asks. "Because Jon deserves to know his mother's family," Rhaegar replies. "Because the North and the Iron Throne should not remain at arm's length forever. And because—" he pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Because there may come a time when the realm needs the North's strength, and that alliance must be built on truth, not political convenience." They stand in comfortable silence for a while, two men who have carried secrets too heavy for words. Around them, the godswood whispers with ancient voices, and the heart tree's carved face seems to approve of this moment of reconciliation. "What do you need from me?" Ned asks finally. "Your friendship," Rhaegar says simply. "Your counsel when I need it. Your support when dark times come. And they will come, Lord Stark. The realm faces threats that go beyond politics or personal ambition. You have both," Ned promises. "The North remembers its debts, and you have given me back my sister's honor. That is not something I will forget." The next morning, Jon explores Winterfell with Robb as his guide. The two boys race through the castle's corridors, climb its ancient towers, and play in the training yard with wooden swords. Their laughter echoes off the stones, bringing life to halls that have been too quiet for too long. In the crypts beneath Winterfell, Jon stands before the empty tomb, prepared for Lyanna Stark, his young face serious as he studies the carved direwolf that marks her place among the kings of winter. He doesn't understand why this place calls to him, why he feels such a deep connection to the silent stone wolves that guard the Stark dead. "My Aunt Lyanna was supposed to be buried here," Robb explains, his voice hushed in the sacred darkness. "But she died far away, and they couldn't bring her home." Jon nods solemnly, feeling a sadness he cannot explain. Something about this place, about this empty tomb, touches a part of his heart that yearns for connections he doesn't understand. She must have been very brave, Jon says quietly. Father says she was the bravest person he ever knew, Robb confirms. He says she had a wolf's heart and a dragon's fire. The words resonate with Jon in ways that puzzle him. Wolf and dragon, ice and fire, the same combinations that run through his dreams sometimes, calling to something deep in his blood. When the time comes to leave Winterfell, both boys are reluctant to part. They have forged a friendship that transcends the political necessities that brought their families together, a bond built on shared laughter and genuine affection. "Will you come back?" Robb asks, as the royal party prepares to depart. "I hope so," Jon replies, looking back at the castle that has captured his imagination. "I like it here. It feels like home somehow." Rhaegar overhears his son's words and feels a stab of complex emotion. Jon's stark heritage calls to him, even without knowledge of his true parentage. The boy belongs to both wolf and dragon, and someday he will need to reconcile those two sides of his nature. As they ride south from Winterfell, Jon looks back at the ancient castle until it disappears beyond the horizon. Something has awakened in him during this visit, some understanding that his destiny is tied to more than just the Iron Throne and the South. "Father," he says, as they make camp that first night, "why did I feel so strange in Winterfell? Like I belonged there." Rhaegar considers his answer carefully. His son is still too young for the full truth, but perhaps it is time to plant the seeds of understanding. "Because you carry the blood of many great houses," he says finally. "The North is part of who you are, just as the South is. Someday you will understand that a true king must belong to all his people, not just those who look like him or share his origins." Jon nods with the solemnity of a child trying to understand adult concepts. He doesn't know that his mother sleeps in a tower in Dorne, or that the boy who showed him such friendship is actually his cousin. But he knows now that the North calls to him, and that calling will only grow stronger as he ages. The reconciliation between dragon and wolf has begun, built on the foundation of one small boy's innocent love for a castle that feels like home. In years to come, that foundation will prove stronger than any political alliance, deeper than any sworn oath. Ice and fire have touched, if only briefly, and the realm is stronger for it. The free city of Pentos sprawls along the coast of the narrow sea like a merchant's dream made manifest. Golden towers rise from marble foundations, and the air smells of spices, silk, and ambition. In the opulent manse of Magister Illyrium Opatis, a bitter young prince paces before tall windows that overlook the harbour. Viserys Targaryen has grown tall in his 5 years of exile, but exile has not been kind to him. His silver-gold hair hangs lank around his gaunt face, and his violet eyes burn with the fevered intensity of obsession. At 13, he carries himself with the imperious bearing of someone who believes the world owes him everything. "Ships," he mutters, staring out at the vessels bobbing in the harbour. "I need ships, I need gold, I need an army." His voice rises with each word. "I need what is mine by right." Across the chamber, 4-year-old Daenerys Targaryen plays quietly with a wooden dragon, her silver hair catching the morning sunlight. She is a beautiful child, but there is a wariness in her violet eyes that speaks to years of living in fear of her brother's rages. "Dany!" Viserys snaps, turning from the window. "Come here, stand properly. You represent House Targaryen, not some beggar's brat." The little girl scrambles to her feet, clutching her toy dragon as she tries to stand as regally as her brother demands. Viserys circles her like a hunting cat, his criticism sharp and constant. Shoulders back, head high. You are the blood of old Valyria, the last of the Dragon Lords. Act like it. He stops in front of her, his face inches from hers. Do you know who stole your birthright, Dany? Our brother, she whispers, the words coming automatically after years of repetition. Our kinslaying brother, Viserys corrects viciously. Rhaegar the usurper, Rhaegar the murderer. He killed our father and stole the Iron Throne that rightfully belongs to me. His voice drops to a hiss. But I will take it back. I will make him pay for what he's done. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, King Rhaegar studies a stack of parchments in his solar, each bearing the spider seal of his master of whisperers. Lord Varys stands beside the king's desk, his soft hands folded in his sleeves, his expression carefully neutral. The reports from Pentos grow more troubling, Your Grace, Varys says in his honeyed voice. Your brother's condition appears to be worsening. Rhaegar looks up from the parchments, his violet eyes tired. 5 years of kingship have aged him, and the weight of ruling a fractured realm shows in every line of his face. Define worsening. He has taken to calling himself King Viserys III, Varys replies delicately. He demands that merchants and servants address him as Your Grace. He speaks constantly of dragons and fire, and of burning those who have wronged him. The eunuch pauses. Most concerning of all, his treatment of his sister has become harsh. The parchment crumples in Rhaegar's grip. How harsh? He strikes her when she displeases him. He forces her to stand for hours while he lectures her about their royal heritage. My little birds suggest that Magister Illyrio grows concerned about the boy's stability. Prince Jon enters the solar carrying his practice sword, his young face flushed from training in the yard. At 5 years old, he has grown into a serious, thoughtful child, with his father's intelligence and his mother's stubborn determination. Father, Jon says, then notices Lord Varys and offers a polite bow. Lord Varys. My prince, Varys replies with an elaborate flourish. You grow more impressive each day. The realm is fortunate to have such a promising heir. Jon accepts the compliment with the grave dignity that always surprises adults. He looks at the parchments scattered across his father's desk, his sharp eyes taking in details that would escape most children his age. Is there trouble, father? He asks quietly. Rhaegar exchanges a glance with Varys, then nods slowly. At 5, Jon is already learning the burdens of rule, and shielding him from difficult truths would serve no purpose. Your uncle Viserys continues to make trouble in Essos, Rhaegar says carefully. He believes the Iron Throne should be his instead of mine. Jon frowns, trying to understand the complex family dynamics that swirl around their dynasty. But you're the rightful king. You won the throne fairly. Some would say I won it with patricide, Rhaegar replies honestly. Your uncle sees an opportunity in that stain on my honor. Grandfather was mad, Jon says, with the blunt certainty of childhood. You had to stop him before he hurt people. That doesn't make you wrong. The simple moral clarity of his son's words brings a sad smile to Rhaegar's face. If only the world were as straightforward as a 5-year-old sense of justice. Your uncle doesn't see it that way, Rhaegar explains. He believes I murdered his father to steal his birthright. In his mind, he's the rightful king, and I am the usurper. Varys clears his throat delicately. If I may, Your Grace, there are other concerns. Magister Illyrio has been entertaining certain guests. Dothraki scouts, representatives from the Golden Company, even envoys from some of the other free cities. Rhaegar's expression hardens. He's shopping my brother around like a prized horse. Indeed, the boy king in exile makes for an attractive investment to those who might profit from chaos in Westeros. Varys produces another parchment from his sleeve. Most troubling is this latest intelligence. There are whispers of a potential marriage alliance. Marriage? Rhaegar looks up sharply. Viserys is 13 years old. Not for him, Your Grace. For his sister. Princess Daenerys is young, but in a few years she will be old enough for a political marriage. The Dothraki have shown particular interest. The implications hit Rhaegar like a physical blow. Daenerys, barely more than a baby, being sold to savage horsemen to buy her brother an army. The thought makes his stomach turn with rage and disgust. We cannot allow that to happen, Rhaegar says flatly. Jon looks between the adults, trying to follow the conversation. Who is Princess Daenerys? Your aunt, Rhaegar explains. Viserys' little sister. She's only a year older than you, and she's never done anything to deserve the life her brother is planning for her. Then we should help her, Jon says, with the same moral certainty he showed before. She's family. It's not that simple, Rhaegar begins, but Jon interrupts. Why not? If Uncle Viserys is bad to her, and if he wants to hurt our family, why don't we bring her here where she'll be safe? The question hangs in the air like morning mist. Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom that adults complicate with politics and precedent. Jon sees the situation with the clarity of innocence. A little girl needs protection, and they have the power to provide it. Varys nods approvingly. The young prince speaks wisely, Your Grace. Princess Daenerys could be extracted from her current circumstances. My little birds are very skilled at such operations. Rhaegar stands and walks to the window, looking out over the sprawling city below. King's Landing has prospered under his rule, but prosperity is fragile. A Dothraki horde landing on Westerosi shores could shatter the peace he has worked so hard to build. See it done, he says finally. But carefully. I want Daenerys brought to safety, not turned into a hostage in some larger game. And Prince Viserys? Varys asks delicately. Rhaegar's jaw tightens. His brother is family, but he is also a threat to everything Rhaegar has built. The boy's madness grows with each passing month, and his bitterness festers like an infected wound. Leave him where he is, Rhaegar decides. Without his sister to sell, his dreams of Dothraki armies become much less realistic. Let him rant and rage in Pentos. The free cities are welcome to him. Jon approaches his father, still carrying his practice sword. Father, will I have to fight Uncle Viserys someday? The question cuts straight to the heart of Rhaegar's deepest fears. He looks down at his son, this serious, intelligent boy who carries the blood of ice and fire, and sees both hope and burden in equal measure. I hope not, Rhaegar says honestly. But a king must always be prepared to defend his kingdom and his people. That's why we train so hard, why we study so much. Not because we want war, but because we must be ready if war comes to us. Jon nods solemnly, then hefts his practice sword with renewed determination. Then I'll get stronger, strong enough to protect our family and our kingdom. That's my boy, Rhaegar says, ruffling his son's dark hair. But remember, Jon, strength isn't just about the sword. It's about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves, even if they happen to be related to your enemies. The lesson isn't lost on Jon. Even as his young mind processes the complex dynamics of family loyalty and political necessity, he understands that true strength comes from doing what is right, not what is easy. That evening, as father and son practice sword work in the castle yard, their movements cast long shadows in the torchlight. Jon's technique improves daily, and his natural athleticism shows the promise of future greatness. But more important than his skill with a blade is the moral foundation Rhaegar is trying to build. "Father," Jon says, as they finish their session, "when Aunt Daenerys comes here, will she be safe?" "She will be," Rhaegar promises. "She will have a home and an education, and the chance to become whoever she chooses to be. That's what family should provide. Not threats and manipulation, but protection and opportunity." Jon sheathes his practice sword with the careful precision Rhaegar has taught him. And Uncle Viserys? Will he ever stop being angry? Rhaegar considers the question carefully. His brother's rage has burned for 5 years without cooling, fed by exile and bitterness and the twisted logic of someone who believes the world owes him everything. "Some people carry their anger like armor," he says finally. "They think it protects them. But really, it just makes them heavier and slower. Your uncle may never learn to put that armor down." "That's sad," Jon says, with the empathy that makes Rhaegar proud. "It is. But we cannot save people who refuse to be saved. All we can do is protect those who want our protection and build something better for the future. Above them, the stars wheel in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of kings and princes. But in the training yard of the Red Keep, a father teaches his son about duty and mercy, about family and justice, about the terrible weight of crowns and the price of protecting those you love. In Pentos, Viserys Targaryen rages against his exile and plans his return. In King's Landing, Jon Targaryen learns what it means to be a true prince. And somewhere between those two extremes, the fate of Westeros hangs in the balance. The dragon has many heads, but not all of them breathe the same fire. 7 years have passed since King Rhaegar's first attempt to rescue his niece from the clutches of exile, and the world has grown darker with each passing season. The great throne room of the Red Keep buzzes with tension as ravens bearing black wings and darker tidings arrive from across the narrow sea. Prince Jon, now 12 years old and already showing the promise of a warrior prince, stands beside his father's throne as Lord Varys reads the latest intelligence from Essos. "Your Grace," the Master of Whisperers says in his silk-soft voice, "I bring grave news from Pentos. Prince Viserys is dead." A collective intake of breath echoes through the throne room. Whatever lords and courtiers had expected to hear this morning, the death of the exiled prince was not among them. Rhaegar's expression remains carefully neutral, but Jon notices his father's knuckles whiten as he grips the throne's armrests. "How?" Rhaegar asks simply. "Molten gold, Your Grace," Varys replies with delicate precision. It seems the young king grew impatient with Khal Drogo's hospitality and made unreasonable demands regarding his crown. The Dothraki have their own methods of dealing with such presumption. Jon frowns, trying to piece together the implications. "Khal Drogo, the Dothraki warlord?" Varys nods gravely. "Indeed, my prince. Prince Viserys succeeded in his long-sought goal. He arranged a marriage alliance with the Horse Lords. Princess Daenerys was wed to Khal Drogo in exchange for a promise of 40,000 screaming warriors." The blood drains from Rhaegar's face. Despite 7 years of planning and multiple rescue attempts, his agents had failed to extract Daenerys from her brother's machinations. She had been sold to savage horsemen, just as Rhaegar had feared, traded like a brood mare for the promise of conquest. "The princess?" Rhaegar says tightly. "What news of her condition?" "Therein lies the truly extraordinary intelligence, Your Grace," Varys continues, producing another scroll from his sleeve. Princess Daenerys has not merely survived her union with the great Khal, she has thrived. My little birds sing of a transformation most remarkable. The frightened girl has become a true Khaleesi, beloved by her husband's people, and commanding respect from warriors who bow to no one. Jon's violet eyes light up with fascination. His aunt, barely older than himself, leading a Khalasar of Dothraki warriors across the eastern continent. The image captures his imagination in ways he cannot fully explain. "But there is more, Your Grace," Varys says, his voice dropping to an ominous whisper. "Much more. The princess was given 3 dragon eggs as a wedding gift, petrified relics from the age of Valyria, thought to be merely decorative. The throne room falls silent as a crypt. Dragon eggs. The very mention of such artifacts sends ripples of unease through the assembled lords. Dragons have been dead for more than a century, their bones decorating the halls of kings, but their fire long extinguished. Thought to be decorative, Rhaegar repeats carefully. Are they not? Varys's smile is thin and knowing. Khal Drogo is dead, Your Grace, killed by an infected wound that festered beyond healing, and when his funeral pyre burned beneath the Dothraki sky, Princess Daenerys walked into those flames carrying the 3 eggs. The silence stretches taut as a bowstring. Jon feels something stirring in his chest, a warmth that has nothing to do with the morning sun streaming through the throne room's tall windows. "She walked into a funeral pyre," Rhaegar says slowly. "And survived?" "More than survived, Your Grace. She emerged naked but unburned, and in her arms were 3 living dragons, Black Drogon, Green Rhaegal, and Cream and Gold Viserion. The age of dragons has returned, and they serve a Targaryen queen. The throne room erupts in chaos. Lords shout questions, ladies gasp in amazement, and guards shift nervously at their posts. But Jon hears none of it. His attention is fixed on the vision that Varys's words have painted. A silver-haired girl emerging from flames with baby dragons in her arms, fire made flesh, and magic returned to the world. "Father," Jon says quietly, his young voice somehow cutting through the commotion. "We have to help her." Rhaegar looks down at his son, seeing something in the boy's violet eyes that makes his chest tighten. "Help her how, Jon?" "She's alone," Jon says, with the fierce certainty that marks all his convictions. "She has dragons, but she doesn't have family. She doesn't have a home. Uncle Viserys is dead, and she's wandering the eastern continent with no one to guide her. She has a Khalasar," Lord Tywin Lannister points out from his position near the throne. 40,000 Dothraki warriors follow her banner. "But she doesn't have dragons who understand dragons," Jon counters, his young mind working furiously. "She needs to learn how to train them, how to control them, how to use them properly. We're the only other Targaryens left. We should be teaching her." The logic is simple and compelling, spoken with the innocent wisdom that sometimes sees truth more clearly than adult sophistication. Rhaegar finds himself nodding slowly as he considers his son's words. "The boy speaks sense," Arthur Dayne says from his position among the Kingsguard. "Dragons bonded to untrained riders have historically been unpredictable." Varys clears his throat delicately. "If I may, Your Grace, there are other considerations. Princess Daenerys has not remained idle since her husband's death. She has conquered Slaver's Bay, taking the great cities of Astapor and Yunkai. She frees slaves everywhere she goes, and builds an army not just of Dothraki horsemen, but of freed slaves who fight for love rather than fear. The implications of this news wash over the throne room like a tide. Daenerys isn't just a lost princess with 3 dragons. She's a conqueror in her own right, carving out an empire in the east while her family rules in the west. "She's coming home," Jon says suddenly, the certainty in his voice surprising everyone. Eventually she'll want to come home to Westeros. And when she does, what happens then? The question hangs in the air like smoke from dragon fire. What indeed happens when Daenerys Targaryen returns to Westeros with 3 grown dragons and an army of devoted followers? Will she come as a sister, seeking reunion, or as a conqueror, claiming her birthright? That evening, Rhaegar and Jon walk together through the castle's godswood, their daily ritual of private conversation more crucial than ever. The heart tree's carved face seems to watch their every movement, and the rustling leaves whisper secrets in the wind. "You want to go to her," Rhaegar observes. "To Essos? To your aunt?" Jon nods without hesitation. "She needs family, and I need to understand." "Understand what?" Jon stops walking and looks up at his father, his young face serious beyond his years. "The dragons, father. I dream about them sometimes. I can feel them flying, breathing fire, burning the world clean. It's like they're calling to something inside me." Rhaegar's breath catches. He has never told Jon about the prophecies that surrounded his birth, about the prince that was promised, or the song of ice and fire. But perhaps the boy feels it anyway, the weight of destiny pressing down on his shoulders like an invisible crown. "Dragons are dangerous, Jon," Rhaegar warns. "They're not pets or symbols. They're weapons of mass destruction, given wings and will. In the wrong hands, they could burn the world to ash." "But Aunt Daenerys isn't the wrong hands," Jon argues. "She's freeing slaves and protecting the innocent. She's using them for justice." "For now," Rhaegar agrees. "But power corrupts, son. Even the best intentions can be twisted by too much strength and too little wisdom. Your aunt is young and inexperienced, wielding forces that could reshape continents." Jon considers this carefully, his mind working through the complex moral equations that govern the use of power. "Then we should help her learn wisdom. We should teach her how to use that strength properly. And if she refuses our guidance, if she believes she knows better than the king who has ruled Westeros for 12 years? The question forces Jon to confront possibilities he would rather not consider. But he has been raised to think like a prince, to consider all angles and prepare for difficult choices. "Then we protect the realm," he says quietly, "even if it means protecting it from family." Rhaegar places a hand on his son's shoulder, pride and sadness warring in his expression. At 12 years old, Jon already understands the terrible burdens that come with power and the painful choices that crown princes must make. "I'm going to send envoys to Essos," Rhaegar decides. "Skilled diplomats who can assess your aunt's intentions and capabilities. We'll offer friendship and alliance, but we'll also gather intelligence about her strengths and weaknesses." "And if she wants to come home?" Jon asks. "Then we'll welcome her with the honor due to a Targaryen princess," Rhaegar promises. "But we'll also make sure she understands that Westeros already has a king, and the Iron Throne is not vacant." As they continue their walk through the Godswood, father and son discuss the practicalities of dragon diplomacy. Jon absorbs every word, storing away lessons about statecraft and family loyalty, about the delicate balance between compassion and pragmatism that defines successful rulers. Above them, the stars wheel in their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of mortals below. But in the Red Keep, 2 Targaryens plan for a future where dragons soar again over the 7 kingdoms, and the songs of ice and fire grow stronger with each passing day. Jon dreams that night of silver hair and violet eyes, of a girl his own age standing in flames with baby dragons coiled around her arms. In his dreams, he can feel their heat, hear their cries, sense the ancient magic that flows through their shared bloodline. When he wakes, his hands are warm, as if he too has touched dragonfire, and he knows with absolute certainty that his destiny lies across the narrow sea, where his aunt builds an empire and commands the last of the great worms. The dragons have returned, and they call to the prince, who carries both ice and fire in his veins. Soon, very soon, that call will become impossible to resist. The great throne room of the Red Keep has never looked more magnificent. Banners bearing the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen hang from every column, their crimson silk rippling in the warm air that rises from 1,000 flickering candles. Lords and ladies from across the Seven Kingdoms have gathered for Prince Jon's 16th name day, and the air thrums with celebration and barely contained ambition. Prince Jon Targaryen stands before the Iron Throne in ceremonial armor of black steel inlaid with silver dragons, his dark hair catching the light as he receives the homage of the realm's greatest nobles. At 16, he has grown tall and strong, his shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of kingship that will someday rest upon them. His violet eyes, so like his father's, survey the assembled court with an intelligence that marks him as worthy of his bloodline. King Rhaegar watches from the Iron Throne as his son accepts the formal oaths of fealty that mark his transition from boy to man, from prince to heir apparent. 16 years have passed since that terrible night when Rhaegar killed his own father to protect this child, and every sacrifice has been vindicated by the man Jon has become. Prince Jon Targaryen, Lord Tywin Lannister intones, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. On this day, you come of age and take your place as the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Do you swear by the old gods and the new to protect and serve the people of the Seven Kingdoms? I swear it, Jon replies, his young voice strong and clear. I pledge my sword to the innocent, my wisdom to the realm, and my life to the defense of those who cannot defend themselves. The words are traditional, but Jon speaks them with a conviction that makes them feel fresh and powerful. Around the throne room, lords nod approvingly, while ladies dab at their eyes with silk handkerchiefs. This is what a prince should be: noble, dedicated, and utterly committed to the welfare of his people. Sir Arthur Dayne steps forward, carrying a sword that makes the assembled nobles gasp with recognition. The blade is Valyrian steel, dark as midnight and sharp as winter, with a dragon-headed pommel that gleams in the candlelight. Dark Sister, Arthur announces, ancestral blade of House Targaryen, carried by Prince Daemon Targaryen and Bloodraven himself. Your grace grants it to his heir on this day of days. Jon accepts the legendary sword with appropriate ceremony, but Rhaegar notices how naturally the weapon sits in his son's hands. Dark Sister was made for warriors, and Jon has trained every day of his life to be worthy of such a blade. The formal ceremonies continue for hours, oaths of loyalty, presentations of gifts, elaborate toasts to the prince's health and future. But as the sun sets over King's Landing, casting long shadows through the throne room's tall windows, Rhaegar makes a subtle gesture that dismisses the court. Soon, father and son are alone among the carved dragons and ancient stones. Walk with me, Rhaegar says quietly. They leave the throne room and climb the Red Keep's highest tower, where a private chamber awaits them. This room holds no throne, no symbols of power, only comfortable chairs, a warm fire, and walls lined with books that chronicle the long history of their house. You spoke well today, Rhaegar says, as they settle by the hearth. The lords were impressed. Jon accepts the praise with the quiet dignity he has learned at his father's knee. They were kind to humor a boy playing at being a man. You are no longer a boy, Jon. Today marks more than just another year of your life. It marks the beginning of your true education in what it means to be a Targaryen. Something in his father's tone makes Jon straighten in his chair. This is not the comfortable conversation he expected, but something deeper and more consequential. There are things I must tell you, Rhaegar continues, his violet eyes fixed on the dancing flames. Secrets that have shaped your life from the moment of your birth. Prophecies that speak to your destiny and the role you must play in the wars to come. The fire crackles and pops, filling the silence that stretches between them. Jon feels a strange stirring in his chest, as if something long dormant is beginning to wake. What prophecies? He asks quietly. Rhaegar stands and walks to one of the bookshelves, retrieving a leather-bound volume that looks older than the Red Keep itself. The pages crackle as he opens it, searching for passages written in High Valyrian. There is an ancient prophecy, Rhaegar says, older than the conquest, older perhaps than Valyria itself. It speaks of a prince that was promised, born amidst salt and smoke, whose coming would herald the end of a long darkness. Jon leans forward, his young mind working furiously to process this information. The long darkness? You mean the long night? The legends old Nan used to tell? Not legends, Jon. History. The long night was real, a winter that lasted a generation, when the dead walked and the living cowered behind walls of ice and stone. It ended when a hero rose to drive back the darkness, wielding a sword of fire against creatures that shouldn't be. The warmth Jon always feels in his chest grows stronger, as if responding to his father's words. You think it could happen again? I know it will happen again, Rhaegar says, with quiet certainty. The signs are already appearing. Maesters beyond the wall report strange movements among the wildlings, entire tribes fleeing south, speaking of white shadows and blue-eyed dead. The Night's Watch sends ravens begging for men and supplies, but they don't dare write what they've really seen. Jon's breath catches. The wall, the ancient barrier that protects the realm from whatever lies beyond. He has always felt drawn to that mysterious place, as if something there calls to his very soul. Maester Aemon writes to me in secret, Rhaegar continues, using ciphers we developed years ago. The old man is nearly blind now, but his mind remains sharp. He believes the long night approaches, and that the prince who was promised must soon reveal himself. The revelation hits Jon like a physical blow. You think I'm this prince, this prophesied hero? I think you were born for a purpose that goes beyond ruling the Seven Kingdoms, Rhaegar says carefully. Your birth was marked by portents, a great comet in the sky, dreams of dragons and wolves, prophecies that spoke of ice and fire united in a single bloodline. Jon stands abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooks the sprawling city below. Thousands of people go about their evening routines, unaware that their prince has just learned he might be destined to fight in a war against the dead. Ice and fire, Jon repeats. What does that mean? Rhaegar joins his son at the window, placing a gentle hand on the young man's shoulder. It means you carry the blood of two great houses, the fire of old Valyria and the ice of the ancient north, dragon and wolf, heat and cold, opposing forces that find balance in you. The words resonate with something deep in Jon's memory, dreams of snow and flame, visions of vast battles between light and darkness, the constant sense that his destiny lies somewhere beyond the comfortable walls of the Red Keep. The dragons, Jon says suddenly, Aunt Daenerys and her dragons, are they part of this prophecy too? Dragons are fire-made flesh, Rhaegar confirms. When the long night comes, The realm will need every weapon at its disposal. Your aunt's beasts may be the key to victory, or they may be the instruments of our destruction. Jon processes this information with the mature intelligence that has always marked him as his father's son. At 16, he possesses a wisdom that some men never achieve, tempered by training and shaped by years of careful education. "What must I do?" he asks finally. "You must prepare," Rhaegar says simply. "Learn everything you can about warfare, about leadership, about the ancient magics that once protected the realm. Visit the wall and see for yourself what threatens us. Study the prophecies and understand your role in what's coming. And if I'm not the prince that was promised? If the prophecies are wrong?" Rhaegar's smile is sad but proud. "Then you will still be Jon Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne and protector of the realm. That burden alone is greater than most men could bear. But I have watched you for 16 years, and I know you are capable of bearing it." They stand together in comfortable silence, father and son contemplating a future that grows darker with each passing day. Outside the window, King's Landing settles into evening quiet, its people safe in their ignorance of the gathering storm. A knock at the door interrupts their reflection. Sir Arthur Dane enters, his face grave with urgent news. "Your Grace," Arthur says, "a raven from the wall. Lord Commander Mormont requests immediate audience with the Crown. He says—" Arthur pauses, choosing his words carefully. "He says the dead are walking, and winter is coming. The prophecy has begun to unfold, and the prince who was promised must soon take his place in the ancient war between light and darkness. Jon Targaryen, 16 years old and newly awakened to his destiny, feels the weight of ice and fire settling around his shoulders like an invisible crown. The long night approaches, and the realm's hope rests with a young man who carries the blood of dragons and the heart of a wolf. In the years to come, that combination will either save the world or watch it burn. But tonight, on his 16th name day, Jon simply stands with his father and accepts the terrible responsibility that prophecy has placed upon him. The boy is gone, and in his place stands a prince ready to face whatever darkness awaits. The song of ice and fire has begun, and its first notes ring clear as steel in the gathering dusk. The wall looms before them like a frozen wave that has stood for 8,000 years, its icy face catching the pale northern sunlight and reflecting it back in shades of blue and white that have no names. Prince Jon Targaryen sits his destrier at the base of the ancient barrier, his royal escort arrayed behind him in perfect formation, and feels something deep in his chest respond to the vast structure's presence. This is where it all began, where the first men built their great wall to hold back the darkness, where his destiny waits. "7 hells," mutters Ser Barristan Selmy, his weathered face tilted up toward the wall's impossible height. "I've seen it before, but it never fails to take a man's breath away." The winch cage groans and creaks as it carries them up the wall's southern face, rising through clouds of mist that cling to the ice like ghostly fingers. Jon's violet eyes remain fixed on the view beyond, the endless expanse of the haunted forest stretching to the northern horizon, dark and forbidding under a grey sky that seems perpetually on the verge of snow. Castle Black squats atop the wall like a great black crow, its towers and keeps carved from the same dark stone as Winterfell, but lacking any trace of warmth or comfort. This is not a place meant for kings and princes. This is a fortress built for desperate men, making their last stand against the end of the world. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont awaits them in the courtyard, his weathered face skeptical, as he watches the royal party dismount. The old bear has served at the wall for longer than Jon has been alive, and he has little patience for southern lords who come north seeking glory and find only cold death. "Your Grace," Mormont says, offering a stiff bow that speaks more to duty than respect. "Castle Black welcomes you, though I fear we have little to offer in terms of royal comforts." Jon removes his helm, revealing hair dark as a raven's wing and eyes that seem to hold their own inner fire. "I seek no comfort, Lord Commander. Only truth." Something in the prince's voice makes Mormont's expression sharpen. This is not what he expected from a pampered royal heir. There is steel in the boy's words, and a seriousness that speaks to understanding beyond his years. "Truth is a cold thing here at the wall, Your Grace," Mormont replies. "Are you prepared for what you might find?" "My father sent me to learn about the threat beyond the wall," Jon says simply. "Whatever that threat truly is." Mormont nods slowly, then gestures toward the keep's main entrance. "Then come. There is much you need to see, and precious little time to see it." The Lord Commander's chambers are sparse and functional, warmed only by a small fire that does little to drive away the wall's eternal chill. Maps cover every available surface, marked with red ink that charts the movement of something that defies conventional understanding. "Wildling raids have increased tenfold in the past year," Mormont explains, pointing to a cluster of red marks near the wall's center. "But they're not raiding for plunder or slaves. They're running from something." "Running from what?" Jon asks, though something in his chest already knows the answer. "The dead, Your Grace. The dead that walk and kill and add the living to their numbers." Mormont's voice drops to a whisper. "3 of my rangers have seen them with their own eyes. Blue-eyed corpses that feel no pain, led by creatures of ice and shadow that our ancestors called the Others." The warmth in Jon's chest flares like a forge fire suddenly fed with bellows wind. This is what he was born for, what the prophecies spoke of, the ancient enemy rising again to bring the long night. "I want to see for myself," Jon says. Mormont's bushy eyebrows rise in alarm. "Your Grace, I cannot allow." "You cannot forbid a prince of the realm from doing his duty," Jon interrupts, his voice carrying the authority he has learned at his father's knee. "If the dead are walking, then the heir to the Iron Throne needs to understand exactly what threatens his future kingdom." Before Mormont can object further, the chamber door opens to admit a figure so ancient and frail that he seems more ghost than man. Maester Aemon moves slowly but purposefully, his blind eyes somehow finding Jon's face with uncanny precision. "So," the old man says, his voice thin but carrying clearly in the small room, "the prince that was promised has come to the wall at last." Jon's breath catches. "You know about the prophecy?" "I know many things, young prince," Aemon replies, settling carefully into a chair by the fire. "I know that Targaryen blood runs true, that dragons dream of fire, and that sometimes the gods send us exactly what we need when we need it most." The old Maester extends one trembling hand toward Jon, who kneels beside the ancient man's chair. When Aemon's fingers touch Jon's forehead, the contact sends a shock through both of them, fire calling to fire across the centuries. "Egg," Aemon whispers, using a name that has no meaning to anyone else in the room. "I dreamed of dragons again last night. 3 heads has the dragon, but this one burns brightest of all." Jon feels something awakening in his blood, something that has slept since the day of his birth, but now stirs to wakefulness. The fire in his chest spreads through his veins, warming him against the wall's bitter cold in ways no hearth ever could. 2 days later, Jon rides out with a ranging party, led by Sir Alliser Thorne, the master-at-arms whose contempt for southern knights is legendary, but whose skill at arms none can question. They head deep into the haunted forest, following reports of a wildling camp that went silent 3 nights past. The forest is wrong. Even a Southron prince can sense it. The trees stand too still, the birds sing no songs, and the very air tastes of something that shouldn't be. Jon's destrier snorts and dances nervously beneath him, sensing dangers that human senses cannot detect. "There," Sir Alliser says, pointing to a clearing ahead where smoke should be rising from cooking fires but isn't. They find the wildling camp exactly as the survivors described, silent as a tomb, with bodies scattered around cold fire pits like broken dolls. But something is wrong with the dead. Their eyes are too blue, too bright, and they move with purpose no corpse should possess. "Whites!" Sir Alliser shouts, drawing his sword as the dead rise from the ground like a nightmare made flesh. The battle is chaos, screaming horses, ringing steel, and the terrible sound of dead hands clawing at living flesh. Jon's blade sings as he cuts down animated corpses, but for every one that falls, 2 more seem to take its place. Then he sees it. The other stands at the edge of the clearing like winter given form, tall and gaunt, with armor that gleams like ice and eyes like blue stars. In its hands is a sword of crystal that seems to drink the light from the world around it. Jon dismounts and walks toward the creature, Dark Sister naked in his hands, while his companions shout warnings he cannot hear over the roaring in his blood. This is his moment. This is why he was born. The other moves with inhuman grace, its ice blade whistling through the air toward Jon's head. But the prince is ready. Dark Sister meets the crystal sword in a clash that sends shockwaves through the clearing, and where Valyrian steel touches other forged ice, both weapons sing with power older than kingdoms. The fire in Jon's chest explodes outward, wreathing his sword in flames that dance along the blade's dark edge. The other recoils, its perfect features twisting with what might be surprise or fear. Creatures of ice and shadow do not expect to face the blood of the dragon this far north. Jon presses his attack, his blade trailing fire as it cuts through the other's defenses. When Dark Sister finally finds its mark, the creature doesn't die so much as shatter, its form dissolving into mist and memory, while its ice sword melts into nothingness. Around the clearing, the whites collapse, like puppets with cut strings. The ranging party stares at their prince in awe and terror, having witnessed magic that should not exist in this age of the world. Dragon, the long night approaches, and when it comes, the realm will need every advantage it can find. "Your Grace," Lord Commander Mormont says, joining him at the wall's edge. "Your father's ravens arrived this afternoon. He commands your immediate return to the capital." Jon continues staring north, his violet eyes reflecting starlight like distant fires. "Send word to my father. Tell him I need to remain here longer. Tell him the wall needs to be prepared for what's coming." "Your Grace, I cannot—" "The dead are walking, Lord Commander," Jon interrupts, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has looked into the eyes of winter itself. "Ancient evils stir beyond your wall, and the realm sleeps in ignorance of the danger. Someone who understands the threat must remain here to coordinate the defenses." Mormont studies the young prince's profile, seeing something in the boy's bearing that was not there before he rode into the haunted forest. Jon Targaryen went north as a curious prince seeking answers. He returned as something else entirely. A warrior who has faced the darkness and found it wanting. "How long do we have?" Mormont asks quietly. Jon closes his eyes and reaches out with senses he is only beginning to understand, feeling for the cold presence that lurks beyond the edge of the world. The answer comes to him like a whisper of winter wind. "Not long enough," he says simply, "but perhaps long enough to make a difference." Above them, the aurora borealis dances across the northern sky in sheets of green and gold, beautiful and terrible as dragon fire. The wall stands as it has for 8,000 years, but now it shelters a prince who carries the blood of ice and fire, and the ancient enemy has learned to fear the sound of Valyrian steel singing in the dark. The song of ice and fire grows stronger with each passing day, and its melody promises that the dawn will come again, no matter how long the night. The Raven arrives at Castle Black on a morning when the northern wind carries the smell of snow and something darker, the scent of winter that has no end. Prince Jon stands atop the wall watching the horizon, his breath forming clouds in the bitter air, when Lord Commander Mormont approaches with the black-winged messenger clutched in his weathered hands. "Your Grace," Mormont says, his voice heavy with reluctance. "Your father commands your immediate return to King's Landing. The realm has need of its prince." Jon takes the parchment and breaks the royal seal, his violet eyes scanning the words written in his father's careful hand. The message is brief, but urgent. News from Essos demands Jon's presence at court, and Rhaegar will brook no delay. "How long has it been since I came north?" Jon asks, though he knows the answer. 6 months, Your Grace," Mormont replies. 6 months that have changed everything. Indeed they have. In half a year, Jon has transformed from a curious southern prince into something the Night's Watch has never seen before. A leader who understands the true threat beyond the wall and possesses the power to fight it. The men who once watched him with skepticism now look to him with something approaching reverence. Sir Alistair Thorne emerges from the keep, his usually stern expression softened by genuine respect. "Your Grace, the men would like to bid you farewell." They gather in the castle's courtyard, grizzled veterans and green recruits, murderers and thieves and broken men who have found purpose in service to the realm. But when they look at Jon, they see something more than a prince. They see the fire-wielding warrior who faced an other in single combat and emerged victorious. "Your Grace," says Gren, a former poacher whose loyalty has been earned through shared dangers, "we'll miss having a true fighter beside us on the wall." Jon places a hand on the young man's shoulder, feeling the weight of responsibility that has settled on him like a second skin. "The fight continues whether I am here or not. Remember what we learned. Dragon glass kills them, fire stops them, and Valyrian steel can shatter their ice blades. Spread that knowledge to every ranger, every steward, every cook in Castle Black." Old Master Aemon appears in the courtyard, moving slowly but with purpose. The ancient man approaches Jon with something wrapped in dark cloth, his blind eyes somehow finding the prince's face with unerring precision. "A gift for your journey south," Aemon says, his voice thin but clear. "Something that may prove useful when ice and fire must unite." Jon unwraps the cloth to reveal a horn carved from what looks like dragon bone, its surface covered in ancient Valyrian glyphs that seem to shift in the morning light. The horn feels warm to the touch, almost alive, and Jon senses power sleeping within its curved form. "What is it?" Jon asks. "A dragon horn," Aemon replies simply. "One of 3 that survived the doom of Valyria. Legend says it can bind dragons to the will of those who know its proper use." The old man's expression grows grave. "You will need allies in the days to come, and dragons are the greatest allies of all." The ride south takes 2 weeks, and with each mile, Jon notices changes in the realm that speak to growing awareness of northern threats. Lords who once ignored the Night's Watch now send supply trains toward the wall. Blacksmiths work dragon glass into arrowheads and spear points. Even small folk whisper of dead things walking and ancient evils stirring. But it is not until Jon reaches King's Landing that he truly understands the urgency of his father's summons. The capital buzzes with activity as ships arrive daily from across the narrow sea, bringing news and trade and troubling reports from the eastern continent. Rhaegar waits for his son in the throne room, but he does not sit upon the Iron Throne. Instead, he stands before a great table covered with maps of Essos, his silver hair catching the light as he studies reports from his vast network of spies and informants. "Jon," he says, looking up as his son enters the hall. "You look different. Older." "The wall changes a man," Jon replies simply, "as does facing the enemy we were born to fight." They embrace briefly, and Rhaegar feels the fire that now burns openly in his son's blood, not the gentle warmth of before, but something fiercer and more focused. Jon has found his purpose, and that purpose has forged him into the weapon prophecy demanded. "Tell me of your aunt," Rhaegar says, without preamble. "What do your spies report from Slaver's Bay?" Lord Varys materializes from the shadows, as if summoned by the mention of espionage, his soft hands folded in his sleeves, and his expression more serious than Jon has ever seen it. "Extraordinary news, Your Grace," Varys says to Jon. "Your aunt has conquered Slaver's Bay entire. Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen all fly the dragon banner. She rules from the Great Pyramid with 3 dragons at her command and an army that grows stronger each day." Jon feels something stir in his chest, not jealousy, but recognition. His aunt has found her own path to power, her own way of fulfilling Targaryen destiny. But destiny demands more than parallel achievements. "How large are the dragons?" Jon asks. "Large enough to carry riders," Varys replies. "Large enough to melt stone and boil rivers. My little birds sing of Drogon's black wings blotting out the sun, of Rhaegal's green fire turning armies to ash, of Viserion's golden flames that burn so bright they blind those who look upon them." Rhaegar spreads his hands across the table, his violet eyes moving from Westeros to Essos and back again. 2 threats face the realm: ice from the north and fire from the east. The dead march behind the wall while dragons soar over Slaver's Bay. We stand between them, and we must find a way to unite ice and fire before both consume us. "You want me to go to her?" Jon says, understanding flooding his voice. "To Aunt Daenerys?" "I want you to do what you were born to do," Rhaegar corrects. "You are the prince that was promised, the one who carries both ice and fire in his blood. If anyone can unite our scattered family and forge the alliance we need, it is you." Jon walks to the great windows that overlook Blackwater Bay, watching ships from a dozen nations dock at the capital's busy harbor. Somewhere beyond that horizon, his aunt rules an empire built on liberation and dragon fire. Somewhere behind him, the wall stands against an enemy that threatens to end all human civilization. "What do you need from me?" he asks. "Go to Essos," Rhaegar says. "Meet your aunt, learn her mind, and measure her intentions. If she truly fights for justice and the innocent, then offer her alliance. Offer her a united Targaryen dynasty and the combined strength of ice and fire. And if she refuses? If she sees me as a rival rather than an ally?" Rhaegar's expression grows grim. "Then you do whatever you must to protect the realm, even if it means protecting it from family." The words echo Jon's own thoughts from months earlier, reminding him that power demands terrible choices from those who wield it. But he has faced others in battle and felt dragon fire burn in his veins. He is no longer the boy who came of age 6 months ago. That evening, the War Council convenes in the Red Keep's map room. Lords great and small gather around the carved table, their faces grave as they listen to reports from both north and east. Jon stands beside his father's chair, no longer just an observer, but a full participant in the realm's governance. The Night's Watch reports increased other activity along the entire length of the wall, announces Lord Commander Mormont, who has travelled south for this crucial meeting. They're massing for something, a coordinated assault that could overwhelm our defences. How long do we have? Asks Lord Tywin Lannister. Months, perhaps less, Mormont replies grimly. The wall has stood for 8,000 years, but it was never meant to hold against an army of the dead, backed by creatures of ice and malice. Jon steps forward, his young voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We need dragonglass weapons for every soldier in the realm. We need to reinforce the wall with fire and steel, and we need dragons. The last word hangs in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room knows what he means, knows where the dragons can be found, knows the price that might be required to secure them. Your Grace, says Lord Randyll Tarly, are you certain your niece can be trusted? Dragons have served Targaryens before, but they have also destroyed them. I cannot be certain of anything until I meet her, Jon admits. But I know this. The realm needs every weapon it can find, and 3 dragons are weapons unlike any other. If Aunt Daenerys truly fights for the innocent, then our causes align. If not, he lets the threat hang unspoken. The council continues deep into the night, planning for wars on multiple fronts and alliances that may prove impossible to forge. When it finally ends, Jon finds himself alone with his father in the chamber where kings have made the decisions that shaped the world. Are you afraid? Rhaegar asks quietly. Jon considers the question honestly. Of the journey? Of meeting dragons? Of facing an aunt who might see me as an enemy? No. He pauses. I'm afraid of failing. Of letting the realm fall to ice or fire, because I couldn't unite our family when it mattered most. Rhaegar places a hand on his son's shoulder, pride and worry warring in his expression. You won't fail. I have watched you grow from a curious boy into a warrior prince, and I know you will do whatever is necessary to protect the people we serve. 2 days later, Jon stands on the deck of a ship bound for Essos, the Dragonhorn secure in his travelling pack, and Dark Sister at his side. King's Landing shrinks behind them as they sail toward the rising sun, carrying the hopes of a realm that faces darkness from 2 directions. The prince that was promised sails east to meet the dragons, and the fate of Westeros hangs in the balance. Ice and fire must unite, or both will consume the world in their conflict. The song grows stronger with each mile they sail, calling Jon toward his destiny and the aunt who holds the keys to victory or destruction. Soon, very soon, the last Targaryens will meet, and their choices will echo through the ages. The harbour at King's Landing has never seen such pageantry, yet the ceremony remains intimate. A father bidding farewell to his son at the edge of the world. Prince Jon stands on the dock beside the royal galley, Song of Ice and Fire, its black sails bearing the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, while its crew prepares for the long voyage across the narrow sea. King Rhaegar places both hands on his son's shoulders, his violet eyes reflecting 16 years of love, pride, and barely contained fear. The boy he once held as a newborn infant at the Tower of Joy now stands taller than most men, his dark hair catching the morning sun, while his own violet eyes burn with purpose and power. "Remember who you are," Rhaegar says, his voice thick with emotion. "You are Jon Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, heir to the Iron Throne, and the bridge between ice and fire. You carry the blood of dragons and the heart of a wolf. Let that guide you when words fail." Jon nods solemnly, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him like an invisible crown. In his travelling pack rests Maester Aemon's dragon horn, carved with Valyrian glyphs that promise power over the great beasts. At his side hangs Dark Sister, the ancestral blade that has tasted other blood and burned with dragon fire. He carries the hopes of Westeros and the fears of a father who may never see his son again. "What if she refuses the alliance?" Jon asks, voicing the fear that has haunted them both. "What if Aunt Daenerys sees me as a threat rather than family?" "Then you remind her that winter is coming," Rhaegar replies, using words that carry weight beyond their simple meaning. "You remind her that the dead march behind walls of ice, and that even dragons cannot burn shadows that have no flesh to consume. You make her understand that ice and fire must unite, or both will be consumed by the darkness." The ship's captain approaches with respectful urgency. "Your Grace, the tide turns soon. If we're to catch the winds to Pentos, we must depart." Jon embraces his father one final time, breathing in the familiar scent of dragon glass and winter roses that has marked all his memories of home. When they separate, both men have tears in their eyes, though neither speaks of them. "Bring her home, Jon," Rhaegar whispers. "Bring your aunt home, and bring the dragons with her. The realm has need of both fire and ice in the war to come." "I will," Jon promises, and the words carry the weight of prophecy. "I will unite our family and forge the alliance we need. The prince that was promised will not fail in this." The song of ice and fire cuts through the waves of Blackwater Bay like a sword through silk, her black sails billowing with favorable winds, as King's Landing shrinks to a speck behind them. Jon stands at the bow, watching the eastern horizon grow larger with each passing hour, feeling destiny pull him toward a meeting that has been written in the stars since the day of his birth. The voyage takes 3 weeks, carrying them across the narrow sea and along the coast of Essos until the great pyramids of Meereen rise before them like golden fangs against the azure sky. Dragons wheel overhead, 3 magnificent beasts whose wings cast shadows across the harbour, while their roars echo off the ancient stones. Drogon is the largest, his black scales gleaming like polished obsidian, while crimson fire flickers between his teeth. Rhaegal's green hide shimmers with bronze highlights, his wings spread wide enough to blot out the sun. Viserys's cream and gold colouring makes him appear almost gentle, until his eyes fix on the approaching ship with predatory intelligence. "7 hells," mutters Sir Barristan Selmy, who has accompanied Jon on this crucial mission. "I've seen paintings, but the reality, they're magnificent." Jon feels the fire in his chest respond to the dragon's presence, calling to them across the water with a voice older than kingdoms. For a moment, all 3 beasts pause in their flight, their great heads turning toward the ship with something that might be recognition. The Great Pyramid of Meereen towers over the city like a man-made mountain, its stepped sides gleaming with gold and silver, while banners bearing the 3-headed dragon snap in the coastal breeze. Jon climbs its endless stairs with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension, knowing that everything depends on the next few hours. Daenerys Targaryen waits for him in the pyramid's throne room, seated on a simple wooden chair, rather than the elaborate throne her conquered enemies once occupied. At 15, she possesses a beauty that makes songs seem inadequate, her silver hair braided with bells that chime softly when she moves. But it is her eyes that capture Jon's attention, violet flames that burn with the same inner fire he has always carried. "Nephew," she says, rising from her chair with fluid grace, "you have travelled far to reach me." "Aunt?" Jon replies, offering a bow that speaks to respect rather than submission. "I come bearing words from my father, King Rhaegar, and an offer that could change the fate of both our realms." Daenerys studies him with the calculating gaze of someone who has learned to read the intentions of men through years of conquest and diplomacy. Around the throne room, her advisors watch in tense silence. Former slaves and exiled knights, sellswords and scholars who have sworn themselves to the breaker of chains. "You look like him," she says finally. "Like our grandfather, Aerys. But your eyes burn differently, warmer, like someone who has seen ice and learned to appreciate fire." "I have seen ice," Jon confirms, his hand moving unconsciously to Dark Sister's hilt. "I have fought creatures of shadow and winter, things that should not exist in this world. The realm faces a threat that goes beyond politics or conquest, and we need every weapon we can find to stand against it." Daenerys tilts her head, silver bells chiming softly. "Tell me of this threat." Jon speaks for nearly an hour, describing the others and their armies of the dead, the ancient prophecies that speak of the prince that was promised, the growing darkness beyond the wall that threatens to consume everything. He shows her reports from the Night's Watch, testimonies from survivors, even sketches of the creatures he has faced in battle. When he finishes, the throne room falls silent, except for the distant roar of dragons circling the pyramid's peak. "You ask me to abandon my conquest," Daenerys says carefully, "to leave Slaver's Bay and fly west to fight shadows and ice. Why should I believe these tales of walking dead and ancient prophecies?" Jon reaches into his pack and withdraws the dragon horn, its bone surface warm to the touch and covered in glyphs that seem to shift in the flickering torchlight. The moment he reveals it, all 3 dragons outside begin to roar, their voices echoing through the pyramid's stone walls. "Because I carry the blood of old Valyria." "Just as you do," Jon says, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Because the dragons recognize their own, and they know that ice and fire were always meant to stand together." He raises the horn to his lips and blows a single, clear note that seems to resonate in the very stones of the pyramid. The sound is hauntingly beautiful, like the song of dying stars, and it calls to something ancient and powerful, sleeping in Targaryen blood. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Drogon lands on the pyramid's balcony with earth-shaking force, his great head pushing through the chamber's tall windows to fix Jon with one enormous golden eye. The dragon's nostrils flare, scenting Targaryen blood and fire magic, and when he speaks, it is with a voice like grinding stone. "Prince," the dragon's voice rumbles in Jon's mind, speaking in the wordless language that existed before men learned to shape their thoughts with sound. "Fire calls to fire. Ice calls to ice. You are both." Daenerys gasps, her eyes wide with shock and something approaching wonder. "He spoke to you. Drogon spoke to you in the old way, the way dragons spoke to their riders in ancient Valyria." "Dragons know their own," Jon says simply, reaching out to touch Drogon's massive snout. The dragon's scales are warm as forge fire, and Jon feels the creature's mind brush against his own, ancient, powerful, and utterly loyal to those who carry the blood of the dragon. The rest of the day passes in a blur of planning and negotiation. Maps are spread across every surface as Jon and Daenerys work out the logistics of moving 3 dragons and an army across the narrow sea. Ravens are dispatched to King's Landing, carrying news that will transform the political landscape of Westeros forever. "My people look to me for protection," Daenerys says, as they stand on the pyramid's highest balcony, watching the sun set over Slaver's Bay. "I cannot simply abandon them to return to a homeland I have never seen." "You're not abandoning them," Jon assures her, his hand resting on the stone balustrade. "You're showing them that their queen fights for all the innocent, not just those in Essos. When the long night comes, it will cover the entire world. Meereen cannot stand alone against that darkness." Daenerys nods slowly, her silver hair flowing in the evening breeze. "You speak wisdom beyond your years, nephew. Very well. I will come west with you, and my dragons will fly over Westeros again. But I have conditions. Name them. My freedmen who wish to come with me will be welcomed in Westeros. No man or woman who has served me faithfully will be cast aside for political convenience." Jon considers this carefully, thinking through the implications of integrating former slaves into Westerosi society. The realm has room for all who serve justice and peace. My father will welcome them. "And when the war against ice is won," Daenerys continues, "we rule together, not as king and subject, but as aunt and nephew, as equals who have united ice and fire against the darkness." The proposal hangs in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Jon feels the weight of prophecy pressing down on him, the knowledge that this moment will echo through history. "The Iron Throne has room for 2 dragons," he says finally, "ice and fire ruling as one." That night, Jon writes his final letter to King Rhaegar, the words flowing across the parchment like liquid fire. "Father, the alliance is forged. Ice and fire are united at last. Aunt Daenerys comes west with her dragons and her army, ready to stand against the darkness beyond the wall. The breaker of chains will be the protector of the realm, and together we will face whatever the long night brings. The prince that was promised has found his queen of fire, and they will rule as one when the war is won. Your son, Jon." 3 days later, the dragons of Daenerys Targaryen rise into the eastern sky, their wings beating against air that has not felt their passage in centuries. Below them, ships heavy with soldiers and supplies cut through the waves of the narrow sea, carrying fire and freedom toward a realm that has forgotten the true meaning of both. Jon rides Rhaegal, the dragon named for his father, feeling wind and flame merge in his blood as they soar above the endless waters. Beside him, Daenerys guides Drogon with the easy grace of someone born to rule the skies, her silver hair streaming like a banner behind her. Viserion flies alongside them, riderless but eager, his golden flames painting the clouds with light. Behind them, Essos falls away into memory and legend. Ahead, Westeros waits unknowing for the return of ice and fire, for the fulfillment of prophecies as old as the wall itself. The long night approaches, but it will not find the realm defenseless. The song of ice and fire reaches its crescendo as 3 dragons carry the future toward home, their roars echoing across the narrow sea like promises of dawn. In the distance, storm clouds gather over Dragonstone, but they are not clouds of war. They are clouds of change, of power returning to the world, of ancient magics awakening to face an ancient threat. The prince that was promised flies west, with fire at his command and ice in his heart, ready to unite a realm and forge an alliance that will burn away the darkness forever. The age of dragons has returned, and winter will learn to fear the flame.